Hey everybody, it's JulieAnn. You are here with me in my Brooklyn kitchen. It's Saturday. This is Baking with Friends. Today I've got my friend Shifali on with me, who I've known since when I was in graduate school at San Jose State. And she's actually the reason why I got involved in the radio station there, and why I know a couple of the people that you've already seen on Baking with Friends, including Alicia from last week. So Shifali is going to join me. We're making ginger molasses cookies. You are preheating your oven right now while I'm speaking at 350 degrees. And today it looks like a whole bunch of ingredients, but the majority of those things are spices. So if you don't have some of those spices, it's okay to omit it. It's okay to substitute something else. Allspice is a great one. Or if you've got like pumpkin pie spice or apple pie spice just hanging out in your house because of Thanksgiving, then let's go that direction as well. But I'll go ahead and walk everyone through that as we go along. And I think my friend who's going to bake along. So today, all the other ingredients that you need along with those spices, it's going to be flour, it's butter, molasses.
Hey! Hi, I'm going to turn it right ways. All right.
I was about to say, I was like, you're a little sideways, but that's okay. We can work with that.
I like to walk on walls.
I know, it looks good. All right, I was just going through the ingredients, so stop me if I forget one. So I said flour, I said those spices, you have salt, you've got baking soda. You've got unsalted butter. Hopefully it's been sitting out at room temperature. If you don't have unsalted butter at room temperature and you just remembered right now, that's okay. The easiest way to get it to room temp is don't put it in the microwave. Although I will admit that every now and then I do put it in the microwave.
I feel like I do that all the time.
They're telling you that you're not, so I'm giving you the caveat out that you probably shouldn't put it in the microwave. I do sometimes. But what happens is if you put it in the microwave, it melts a lot of it down. And so Mary, who is our science expert, can give us a little bit more detail about why you shouldn't put butter in the microwave to get it to room temp. What you can do is you can cut it up into pieces. That will go ahead and get it to room temp faster. Stick it right by your oven that you're warming up right now, not inside it, right by it. That will help it as well. You just need to get it soft enough to mix because it'll be easier if it's soft. Now, if none of these things help, you can also like smack it down into like a flat little pancake, and that'll help it melt down a little bit faster as well. And you're going to smush it down anyway. So whatever you'd like to do to get your butter to room temperature, go for it. However, if that still doesn't work out and you've like, as I'm talking, you're like, none of this is going to help me, JulieAnn, I've just got my stick of butter. That's okay. You're just going to have to beat it for an extra long time, and we'll work with that. Okay, guys? So everybody, we can do it.
Yeah, I was really careful. But I still think it was like almost frozen, so.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. So I took my butter out literally not even 30 minutes ago, and it's good enough. Like it's still a little bit chilled. But what it's going to happen is you're just going to have to beat it for a little bit longer. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, not ideal. So
yeah, got it. Okay.
But for like home bakers, especially if you don't bake a lot, like these are the kinds of things that people don't say necessarily, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. And Mary says the components of butter would permanently separate in the microwave. Yeah, and that's what we don't want. So, all right. So I mentioned the spices. I mentioned the flour. I mentioned the butter. The baking soda and the salt. You're also going to need brown sugar, a little bit of granulated or cane sugar, and some molasses. Now, the molasses is what's going to make this cookie chewy. Normally, when you make gingerbread, you think of like gingerbread men, like the snaps that are like a little bit crispy that you can, make houses with, things like that. This is not that cookie. So if you are thinking that is this cookie, stop watching. No, don't stop.
I totally thought it was that cookie.
It's not. This is like more of like a soft cookie. And the reason why it's soft is because of the molasses. And again, I'm going to totally default to Mary to tell us why the molasses makes everything chewy. But the molasses is the reason why this is going to be chewy. Now, you can omit the molasses and, deal with more sugars and things like that to make it a snap, or to make it like things that you make with like gingerbread houses. But for this case scenario, that's not what we're doing. We're making the chewy kind, which I find enjoyable. Because if you like gingerbread cake and you like gingerbread cookies,
yeah,
it's kind of like a middle, right? Because it's like a soft gingerbread. So
yeah, I it cakey. It was cakey. Mine felt like a little bit cakey when I I cheated and I did a test run so that I didn't look like a fool.
That's okay. That just means you have more cookies, you know? This is the season. I was just telling Shifali that I've been baking way too many cookies in my house. Like, surprise, surprise. So I'm trying to curb myself and we'll maybe make like half a batch. But we will work with what we've got. So I've got my stand mixer out. Shifali, are you using a stand mixer or are you... hand mixer is great. And if you don't have either of those tools, you can beat it by hand. But again, this is where the room temperature butter would be your friend. Because if your butter is not room temp, you definitely need the electric.
Yeah, otherwise it's a workout.
Yeah, I mean, unless you enjoy the workout, which I will not fault anybody if they want to do it by hand. Because I feel like some people, like back in the day, nobody had these tools. You know, people were doing it by hand all the time. But if you are like Shifali and I've got a stand mixer. Mine has a paddle attachment. That's what I'm using today. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we?
Right.
So we went ahead and we mise en place. Mary's making a vegan version of this cookie. Yeah. I think the only thing that you really need to veganize, Mary, is either use like a shortening or vegan butter or some like coconut oil, something like that. But if you have any tips for anybody that wants to veganize, please definitely feel free to share. So I am whisking together my dry ingredients. So much like cake, cookies, if anybody's ever come across like, how come my cookies, you know, are so like hard? How come my cookies don't turn out like the ones like they do in the bakery? There's like a lot of reasons for that. One of the major ones though is you're probably mixing too much and the gluten gets activated, which is what happens in cake, which makes chewy cakes and things like that. So we want to go ahead and mix all our dry ingredients together before we mix our wet ingredients because of the idea that we want to make sure everything is incorporated so we don't overmix. So it's just a little bit of an overmix. If you are on one of those days where you're just like, I just want to put everything in the bowl, there's cookies like that, there's cake like that. So, but today we're going to try to be good about it. And we're going to mix together our flour. I've got, the recipe is 2 1/4 cups of flour. Now you can actually mix some of your flours. If you want to be sneaky about it, you can put whole wheat flour in here, just a smidge. No one will notice. Like
that would be awesome.
Quarter
I
cup.
do that with my kids so that
you can just sneak it in. Like, you know, don't make it all whole wheat, but like maybe a little bit, like, you know, a little 3/4 and a quarter like whole wheat, and then they'll never know. So I'm going to go ahead and whisk together my flour, and to my flour, I'm going to go ahead and add 2 teaspoons baking soda, and I believe it's a 1/2 teaspoon salt. So I'm just going to add that directly into my flour mixture here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I have a whole bunch of spices. Now, this is where I was saying that if you have apple pie spice, if you have allspice, if you have pumpkin pie spice, like all these spices are totally okay to use if you don't have all these different spices. Because sometimes people just don't have random, I don't know.
Yeah,
ginger.
I'm using allspice. So.
Yeah, just use allspice. All you need to do is you just need to do the same amount of allspice as it would be here. So like, for example, it's like, you know, 1 1/2 teaspoons ground ginger, it's 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1/4 teaspoon ground cardamom, that's optional, you don't have to put that in, 1/4 teaspoon ground nutmeg. Now if you add up all those measurements and then just do that all allspice, that's fine. The one thing that I would say is that it's nice to have more cinnamon, so if you've got cinnamon on hand, use that, and if not, just default more allspice. So yeah. I've got cinnamon, 1 1/2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 1/2 teaspoons of ground ginger, hence the reason why we call this gingerbread. But some people like using fresh ginger. I do not, so I'm not a fresh ginger person. I know that's such a bad thing. But if you like fresh ginger, you can do that as well. People like fresh grated ginger. I think the ginger taste to me overpowers everything else, and I like having all the spices. I don't know about you, but I like when you bite into it and it feels like that holiday-ish because you taste a whole bunch of different spices, and I feel like sometimes ginger overpowers everything.
Yeah, like, would you use ginger paste or would you use like ginger like cut?
Grated like fresh ginger?
Yeah, no. Yeah. I feel like that would overpower it too.
I mean, and some people like cutting up like candied ginger and folding that in, and that's a whole taste thing. Like if you want to do that, that's totally up to you.
Yeah, I'll try that.
I am not of the elk to do that. But so I'm using my dry ground ginger, and then like I said, I've got cloves, I've got cardamom. That's optional. You don't necessarily have to put that in, but I think it gives it like a nice little lift. And then you've got some ground nutmeg. So I'm going to take all of that and putting that all in my flour.
Okay.
And we're whisking that all together. So we've got the flour, the salt, the spices, and the baking soda. And I'm going to whisk that until it's combined, and then I'm just going to put it to the side. And then I am now going to have my mixer do most of the work.
That's good.
All right. So I'm going to go and grab my butter. So like I said, you are using 3/4 cup of butter or 1.5 sticks of butter. You can have either, it makes it easier on your mixer, your hand mixer, if you cut it up into pieces, because then your mixer doesn't have to do all the work. Or you can just be like, screw that, mixer, you do all the work.
That's me.
That's me too. I just put like the whole stick, and then my mixer kind of like gets aggravated with me. But oh well, mixer, that's what you've been bought for. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a view of my mixer. I'm going to stick my butter in here. We are going to go ahead and cream the butter and the sugars together, and that's so that we can go ahead and get all these wet ingredients incorporated. And the sugars that I've got today is I've got 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and I've got about 3/4 cups, and that's packed brown sugar, and it can be light or dark. And I'm going to put that all in the mixer, and we are going to mix this until it is really kind of, I don't want to call it foamy, but it's going to be creamy, and it's going to be pretty creamy. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're incorporating air into the mix, 1, and then 2, you're going to ensure that the sugar gets incorporated with the butter really well. Because the worst thing is when you bite into a cookie and it has like weird pockets of sugar or weird pockets of butter, you know what I mean? So
I have one question.
Yes.
Do you beat the butter before you add the sugar, or you just put them both together?
You can beat the butter by itself first if you feel like your butter is too hard. I would say you can beat your butter a little bit first. But you can actually, to save time, you can dump both of them in. And I'm actually going to dump both of them in because my butter's not that bad. So if you have non-room temperature butter, though, I would suggest that you beat your butter a little bit before you add the sugar. And the reason why is because it's so hard that your mixer literally just be like, and it's like your butter is just be such a huge block for a long time. The sugar's not going to mix it. So I would do that.
I was like, mine's kind of sticking to the thing, so.
Let me see if I can, all right, guys, I'm going to try to be good about this. Okay, so in my mixer, I've got my butter, and I'm about to add my sugar.
Okay, it's good.
And then we're going to mix it until it is pretty creamy. If anybody has any questions at this point or another, this is the part where Mary is going to be really helpful because you will not hear Shifali or I over the sound of our mixer. So I'm going to turn this on. Now, I will say one caveat is that if you are mixing and you find that your butter and your sugar are climbing up the mixer, just take your spatula, push it down, and then start up your mixer again. So if you're seeing it like kind of spread and it's not mixing together and it's just like flattening out, you can go ahead and use your spatula, move the mixture around, and then let your machine go to work again. So that I will go ahead and say. And back to this mixing where you won't hear Shifali or I.
I feel like mine looks pretty good. Yeah.
That's pretty good, yeah. So we wanted, so as you can see, and I was just talking about how mine is climbing, and you can kind of see like mine's a little chunky. If I can try, I'm going to try to get it a little bit creamier than that, just because you want it to mix a little bit. And you can see, and I'll get this a little bit closer to everybody, you can see how it has not really incorporated in. You can see pockets of brown sugar and stuff like that. If that's happening, I would mix it just a little bit more. But don't be worried if it's not completely mixed if we move along, because as we mix in, and especially when we mix in the egg, this is all going to get mixed together quite well. So I'm going to let it go for like another minute.
Okay.
I think one of the things about home baking is, I think that is a little bit different than when they do it in the bakery, is I think people are afraid to overmix sometimes because they think, oh no, if I do that, it's going to ruin what I'm making. And the adverse could be true. I think we have not added any of the flours. So at this point, if you overmix something, it's not going to hurt whatever you're making. It's only when we add in everything together when it becomes a little bit problematic, because as you know, baking is a little bit of a science. And this is the part where I ask Mary, as usual, to somehow digest that and tell everybody how that works, because I'm not a science person, as we all know. So I'm going to show everybody what my butter is looking like right now. Shifali's butter was pretty good, actually. I think hers is good to go. So mine is actually incorporated a lot more, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and push this down. And everything looks so small in my bowl because my bowl is ginormous. So please don't use that as a judgment about what's happening in your own bowl. But this is pretty good. And if you look at now, you don't see as much of the sugar crystals. You can let that go for a little bit if you wanted, if you think you needed a little bit more time. If you don't think it's incorporated enough. I think mine looks pretty creamy. I think I'm going to let it go. How about you, Shifali? What do you think?
Mine's good. I think mine's good.
Okay, cool. So to this, I did totally forget to mention we need an egg. And I was telling Shifali I had this huge incident earlier. Literally 5 minutes before this call, I was taking my eggs out, which is bad because they probably should have been room temp, but I was taking my eggs out and I dropped all these eggs onto my floor, like 4 or 5 of them, and I was just like, today is not my day. So I
have a question also, because it says vanilla extract optional. So when and where do you add that one?
So if you do want to add in the vanilla extract, you can go ahead and add that. And I believe you can add up into like about a teaspoon of vanilla extract if you'd like. Some people like less, some people like more. You would add that now with the egg and with the butter. And actually, I'm going to add some. That's actually I didn't think about that. I like this. Shifali, I like that you're reminding me. So I'm going to put in, and so this is the thing with vanilla. So like in chocolate chip cookies, when you're eating the chocolate chip cookie, the vanilla actually, you can kind of taste it. That's a little bit of a prominent flavor. It might get a little bit lost in the spices. I wouldn't add in more than a teaspoon just because it might overtake some of the spices a little bit. But I will say that ginger is very strong, so it shouldn't get completely overpowered. So I would go probably like maybe half a teaspoon, depending on what
I get a half a teaspoon because that's what you recommended. So.
Right. I was reading in, as a side note, I was reading this article on baking, and some pastry chefs were talking about how they add extra vanilla, and that's what makes everything taste very delicious. So every time you think to yourself, I've absolutely splashed too much vanilla in my bowl while I'm measuring it, that's all right. You're fine. So
yeah. See, you're like an expert. I said this before. You're the expert level, and I nailed it.
Stop. No. Half the time I'm just, and Mary will attest, half the time I'm just jabbering, and Mary has to correct me. So feel free to correct me, Mary. So I'm going to add in my egg right now. So I've added a little bit of vanilla. I've added my butter and my sugars, and that's my egg. I'm adding that in. I like cracking it in a separate container because notoriously eggs are like shells tend to come into eggs whenever you add it in.
Right.
So, and I'm just going to go ahead and mix that together. The mixture is going to look a little bit curdled. That's okay. It's fine. This is going to mix a little bit, and then we're going to add the molasses. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it mix together. And then again, if it starts to climb up the bowl, then just use your spatula. So I'm going to go ahead and push down my mix with my spatula. And then let it go again. And I always like starting my mixing low and then move it up as it goes along. Alright. Mine's looking a bit curdled. That's good. That's what it's supposed to look like because you just added egg. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add my molasses. We're putting in a 1/4 cup of molasses. And it can be dark. It can be the light kind. It just has to be unsulfured. I'm using some robust molasses. Don't ask me what the difference that is. This is where I rely on Mary.
I got some organic molasses because that was not readily in my pantry.
And it's one of those things that you'd never think about using molasses, but you guys, actually, you probably use molasses more than you think you do because the only difference between brown sugar and white sugar is the fact that white sugar is mixed with molasses. So if you use brown sugar at any point in your life, you've had molasses. So that's what we're adding. We're adding that molasses in. So it's going to add sweetness, but it's also going to change the texture of it. So I'm going to go ahead and mix all that together. And again, you're wanting to go ahead and make sure everything is incorporated. At this point, you cannot overmix, okay? That is not a problem you're going to have. It's only when you add the flour where I'll start cautioning you and telling you, oh, maybe just calm down a little bit on the mixing. But at this point, just make sure everything is really well mixed together. You want everything combined because we're about to add all of this to the flour. And like I said before, when we go ahead and add in the flour, that's the point where it gets a little bit sticky, right? No pun intended. Sticky. Because at that point, if you overmix it, it's going to incorporate too much food. So.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about this part.
Mary is being fabulous and putting down little notes about all the things that we've been saying, and she did just make a note about the molasses, and it's about sugarcane maturity. So,
oh wow, that's so cool.
Thank you, Mary. That's a good fun fact. So, sulfur molasses is made from sugarcane that hasn't had as much time to mature, and unsulfured is sugarcane that has been matured.
Oh, wow.
These are things that we do not. You just go to the store, you just buy these things. You just have no idea. So, all right, I'm gonna let it go a little bit more. It's looking messy, is what it's looking like, and that's okay. All right. So this is the point where I've mixed together my butter, my sugar, my eggs, and the molasses, and it's looking kind of like curdled. It kind of looks gloopy. Probably not very pretty. That's why, because at this point we're about to add the flour. So, like I like to do is I just take all my flour and I'm just going to dump it straight into this bowl.
All at once?
All at once.
Oh, wow, that's bold.
You can, and Shifali actually brings up a good point. You can go ahead and add it, like half of it, mix it a little bit, and then add another half. That's totally okay too, especially if you think you might overmix it. So I think I mentioned it to you guys. I'm only making half of the recipe because of my cookie practice. So me adding in all of it at once, not so bad because I don't have lots to go in my bowl. If you're making the full recipe like Shifali is, you can add in half, mix it a little bit so it incorporates, but not completely, and then add in the rest of the flour mix. And what you want to do is you just want to combine it until it is just mixed in. So don't go past, like stare at it and go, oh, it needs like 20 more minutes. No, until everything just combines, okay? And again, push down any of the flour that comes in, stop your mixer, push down the flour, make sure, give it a, sometimes a lot of like the butter mixture gets stuck at the bottom. You can go ahead and take your spatula, push the bottom up, put it to the top, and get everything mixed together. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my mixer. I start low again. And like I said already, I can see my flour climbing. So I'm going to go ahead and just push down my flour. And I'm going to bring up the bottom a little bit. Ooh, that smells delicious though.
Yeah, it smells so good.
It smells like the holidays.
Yum. We need smell-o-vision.
I know.
Was that in Willy Wonka?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what's happening right now. So I've got a little bit of flour pockets. I'm going to look this up. I've got a little bit of flour pockets at the bottom of my bowl, but that's not enough for me to be like, I'm going to turn on my whole, ooh, there goes drops, turn on my mixer again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this remaining by hand because it's not that much, and I'm going to try to control how much mixing is happening. So actually, I'm going to take this off my bowl. I'm going to grab my handy-dandy spatula. I like doing the last couple turns by hand just because I can watch it a little bit. But again, if you've got a really, like, if you're using a hand mixer, actually, this is the part where it's actually really good because you can control everything that's happening. With the stand mixer, you sort of have to watch a lot more. But I think with the hand mixer, you can stop it, you can stare at it, you can move your mixer around in different spaces. I think it's a really good tool to have.
That's kind of why I opted for this, because I felt like.
So, like I said to you, there's little pockets of flour, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix the rest of it by hand. I see it at the bottom. It just clumped up at the bottom. And I'm just going to mix it by hand. And you can also be mixing this whole dough by hand. You don't have to be using an electric mixer. It just makes life easier, right? Because everyone used to do this by hand before. So I'm going to get it. So now we're in this kind of like gloopy dough, okay? If you're finding that your dough is too sticky right now at this point or too wet, you can stick this dough in the fridge for like about 20 minutes to chill. And at this point, if you don't even want to bake your cookies, guys, you don't even have to bake it right now. You can go ahead and form these into balls, put them in the refrigerator overnight, and then bake them tomorrow. Or just take this whole bowl. If you don't want to make them into balls, take the dough, put that in your refrigerator overnight, and just make them tomorrow, create the balls yourself tomorrow. And if you want to be extra about it, you can go ahead and create all the ball doughs and then freeze them and then have them in your freezer for like 6 months. So if anybody ever comes over, well, post-COVID, right, guys? Because we're in pandemic. But the idea of like you can have something fresh baked in your oven whenever you want, right? And you have made them. And you can say like, I just made these cookies, everybody. And everybody will think you're so amazing because you just busted out some like fresh baked cookies. No one has to know that you made the dough like 6 months before.
How long do you keep dough in the freezer to?
How long do you keep it in?
Yeah, how long do you?
I would say about 6 months. If it lasts 6 months, if you don't get like, you know, the idea of like wanting to just make it right away. I usually like keeping cookie dough in my freezer. I'm notorious for keeping chocolate chip cookie dough in my freezer because first of all, I love chocolate chip cookies. They're my favorite. And sometimes you just don't either have the ingredients on hand or you just don't have the time and the inclination to like make a batch of cookies. And it's so easy to just turn on your oven, go into your freezer, get some cookie dough, and stick it on a sheet. It's just like going to the store and buying like the cookie dough that they've made, right? Like buying the Toll House or the Pillsbury or whatever. So at this point, like I said, if your dough is a little sticky, I would chill it. This is okay. This is actually feeling all right. It should be soft. But it should.
Like, it's pretty good, I think.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and use a cookie scoop. However, you can use your hands, you can use a tablespoon, but we want about a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of dough. The other week when I was with Alicia, she was using her cookie scoop, and I was like, I'll be rustic. I'll use, you know, my hands and my tablespoons, and she was much faster. So today I'm using my cookie scoop. This is about a 2 tablespoon cookie scoop, so about a tablespoon or 2 will be good. We're going to go ahead and stick this on about 2 inches apart. And Shifali might have mentioned it, but these are going to be, because we put so much baking soda in it, they will puff up. So if you do like flatter cookies, I would, and we'll talk about it once we put them on the sheet, press them down just a little bit. So I will give you a view. We're going to put down some, I like rolling these gingerbread cookies, the dough in granulated sugar. That gives it a nice sheen. You don't have to, you could just put it down. If some people like using powdered sugar because it gives it that crinkle effect because the cookies do crinkle and you can get little powdered sugar spots in between the cracks. Or there's stuff like this. This is sparkling sugar that is a little bit finer, and I'll see if I can get closer up to this. It's a little bit more than, yeah, they're a little bit thicker, I would say, than your regular granulated sugar, but they're about the same thing. It's basically just sugar. So you can use colored sugar as well if you're really in the holiday mood and want to go ahead and put like red and green and, you know, be very holiday. You can do that as well. Yeah. So I'm going to just put a whole bunch of, I usually like putting it like on a plate. Like this is just like a plastic takeout container that I just grabbed at random. And I just put a whole bunch of sugar down. You can put granulated sugar down too, or powdered sugar, like I said, or, you know, sparkling sugar. Just put them down in this bowl. And what we're going to do is we're going to scoop these out. I go about this much. I taper off a little bit sometimes. Sometimes I feel it's too much. I pop it in my hand, and all we're going to do is, when you roll these into a ball, you do I just do this round method, but everyone has different ways that they do it. And then I get round enough that it's pretty round, and then I dump it into the sugar, and then I roll it around, like so. Nice. Yeah. It's great what Shifali's doing because she has like an entire bowl of like sugar and she can just drop it. That's actually very smart. Yeah, I just did it. That's actually very, versus me who's like, a little bit at a time. No, she's working it. So I'll go ahead and give you a view of what's happening here. So like I said, I'm taking the dough, I'm scooping these out about this much. I'm rolling it a little bit. And as you can see there, my dough's not sticky enough that it's not sticky on my hand. Like I said, if yours is a little bit stickier, I would put it in the fridge just for a few minutes, probably about 20 or so. We'll give it a good chill. And then I just go ahead and finish rolling this. And I'm rolling it, like I said, in this sugar. I might get fancy in a second and start using colored sugar, but for now, and this is the part of the bake which is always very soothing. And this is the part, like if you've got like kids or you've got other people hanging out in the house with you and you need to give them a task to do, this is one of those things that you can have help with. Mine said that they would only come eat. Sounds about right.
they're like, we're gonna play video games, and then we'll come when it smells like they're
They're
baked.
done. I remember. I like how they always would just mystically appear. Like you just see like cookies or something like that mystically appear at your house. And you're like, oh mom, thanks. Just walk away.
Yeah, it's not sticking on my hands. That's good. That makes me
good. Yeah. So what's good about this particular recipe that we adapted is
Mary said fancy sugar being extra.
I am totally using the fancy sugar and being extra. You know what I realized, and I'll get into this right now. I realized that I looked in my cabinet and I had a lot of sprinkles, and I was like, I really need to get down my sprinkles, and I just don't use them as often as I think. So I'm definitely using. I had this. Look at how ginormous this was.
Yeah,
sparkling sugar that I have no like. When do I use this ever? So I'm like, it's happening. It's the holidays. This is the time, guys. This is the time.
I think I like the idea.
I think I lost everybody for just a second.
Yeah,
you say that you like the idea.
I was like, am I talking to myself?
You're like, am I talking to myself? What's happening right now? Hello? Hello? At least Mary's like there. She can go ahead and say like, hey.
I feel like I talk to myself all the time anyway.
So I'm saying about 2 inches apart. I would say probably 3 in a row. What are you doing?
I'm in a row here. I can actually show you. Because they don't actually spread. Because I did this test run, like I noticed, because you know, like normally when you bake, sometimes like the cookies like spread quite a bit sometimes, but these ones don't really. So
yeah, and here's where I will note about cookies that spread. So if you notice that your cookies spread a lot, one of the reasons why that they're doing that is because the butter is melting fairly quickly. So if your butter is pretty melted already, that's what's going to cause the spread. So that's why people like chilling their cookie dough, because it basically makes your butter pretty cold, and then that way it doesn't spread as much. So Shifali, you're about to put yours in, aren't you?
Well, I'm not done yet. I have a couple.
I'll just show you the rows. Oh yeah, that's about good. That's what I think too. I'm gonna do 3 rows of 4 probably, and then I'll push them down. But that's usually what happens is your cookies usually spread because of the fact that the butter is melting fairly quickly. So you'll find that if you refrigerate your dough, I'm a big proponent of refrigerating cookie dough. I like refrigerating cookie dough, and sometimes, and Mary will attest, I am extra about it, and I will refrigerate my cookie dough for 24 hours. Just like make it, put it in the fridge, don't worry about it, and then the next day. But if you're very impatient, then don't do it.
I'm impatient. If I want cookies, I want them now.
Yeah. Well, you can also do it quick where you can put your cookie dough in the freezer. I would go ahead and make them into balls, put them in the freezer for like, I don't know, 15 minutes, and then that will probably do a good effect as well.
Got it.
But like I said, you don't have to. I'm going to try to see if I can fit all these on one sheet. This is either going to be like the best idea I've ever had or like the worst.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you guys what's happening right now. So, woo. Look at all my molasses that I just spilled on the side. So I am taking my cookie.
I have a question for Mary. If you're using it, like I don't understand the difference between dark and light molasses, and does it change the color of the cookie?
Oh. I would assume that it would not so much. I mean, I guess it would a little bit because of the, you're right, just because of the context of it.
Like they have like light and dark corn syrup, right? And
which I always, yeah, light and dark corn syrup is one of those things. I mean, I just plopped that down. I didn't even try to roll it in my hand. All right, guys. This is the part where my laziness is taking over. All right.
Setting it.
I think I've got one more in here, or maybe I can make this into 2. This is the moment where it's like you've decided like if you have to make one giant cookie, or you're gonna make like a giant or small little itty bitty one.
Yeah. So I have another question too, because I was watching a video and they used like a glass bottom to flatten it out just a little.
Yeah, you can do that. You can totally do that. That's actually a great idea.
Okay.
And if you wanted to try, you can go ahead and just do a couple of them if you think, oh, maybe this won't work as well. But yeah, you can do that because I think you mentioned it earlier that these are not going to flatten so much. They're going to stay pretty puffy. So if you're the type of person that likes a flat cookie, then I would definitely recommend flattening them down just a little with your hand.
Yeah. That's cool. That was easy. Look. I flattened mine.
Oh, yay! Those look great. So we're just going to stick them in for about 8 to 10 minutes, depending on your oven. I usually start at the low end at 8 minutes. I would look at your oven and just double check to see what's happening. You're looking for, because they're brown, it's going to be one of those moments where they're either going to go from dark to like really dark, and you'll notice it. But they should start browning a little bit more on the edges, and then the bottoms will be a little bit more firm. So we'll be seeing that in the oven. So about 8 to 10 minutes. And I think I'm about to put mine in the oven as well.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you. So.
Oh, put them in. Put them in.
Oh, okay. I'll do that then.
I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to space this. All right. So I'm going to do what Shifali did. I'm actually going to use my hands to smush down. So I'm just going to smush down with my hand to make them a little bit flatter. A little bit. There we go. This is the part where I'm seeing, like, did I make a good circle? All right. And again, if you don't like flattened cookies, if you want them to be a little bit puffy, because some people do, then I say go ahead and just keep them as is. I'm actually going to sprinkle a little bit more sugar on top, because I am, like Mary said, a little extra. I'm going to spread, just because I flattened some and it got, there you go. All right. So I'm taking my gingerbread cookies, and we'll talk about what you can do actually with these gingerbread cookies after they bake, because speaking of being extra, there's ways you can decorate these things that we can talk about. So I'm going to put this in my oven right now, about 8 minutes. Middle rack, 350.
It's 375, no?
Is it 375?
I believe so.
375. All right, go with the Shifali. 375. I always just default my life. I'm like, it's supposed to be 350, 375.
The darker, the more boiling after processing.
This is the moment where I'm glad that you're here, Shifali, so that way when I'm like, yeah, this is totally what you're doing, you can be like, no, that's not. I'm like, you're the one who did this recipe, JulieAnn. What happened? 375. Yes, thank you. So my cookies are in the oven. So let's talk about what happens when they come out. So you can serve them as is. Now, if you want to be a little bit decorative about it, if you want to be a little bit more fancy, then you can go ahead and do some decorations to your gingerbread. So I went ahead and I added a whole bunch of sparkling sugar on top of mine. You could have done the same thing. You could have put some sprinkles on top, colored standing sugar. I wouldn't put like those non-parallels or those Jimmy sprinkles, because that might feel odd on like a gingerbread. Although, if you really like those kinds of things, and when I say that, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oops. So these are the Jimmy sprinkles that I'm talking about, and then these are non-parallels, which is what you usually see like on ice cream and like animal cookies. Yeah. So these are the ones that I probably wouldn't put on top of my cookies. However, if you want to be super holiday about it, you totally can, if you want. You can do that directly on top of the cookies before it bakes. Or you can be a little fancier. You can take chocolate, like white chocolate is a good one, or you can take, regular darker milk chocolate, good quality chocolate, okay, guys? So like not chocolate chips. It would be like a bar of chocolate that you've got, or like, one of those baking bars of like chocolate or dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, whatever you've got. And I would chop that up really finely, and then you can stick that in the microwave in 30-second increments while it melts. Mix it in between until it's completely melted. And then when your cookies are cool, you can dip those cookies. And if you want to be more decorative, you can do half the cookie and like half in chocolate and half not. So it's like, a little bit, depending on which side you want to eat first. You can do the whole thing in chocolate if you want. And then if that's not enough for you, you can add, at that point, you can add even more sprinkles. You've got some gold sprinkles around. You can put some gold sprinkles on top, or you can go ahead and put any, like, I don't know if you want to add like different things like nuts, or you can add, coconut or whatever else that you feel like will go well with gingerbread. Candied ginger, you want to sprinkle some candied ginger on top that you've chopped up, you can do that as well. You don't even have to dip it. You could take like a fork and like drizzle chocolate on top too. That's a good idea. So any of those things. And if you want, you can also just do the bottoms. You can just put the bottoms in chocolate and then like dry them upside down so the bottoms are chocolate and the top looks like a gingerbread cookie.
Have you done the chocolate part? Does it taste like, I feel like, how does
I have. So I've done this cookie and I've dipped it in white chocolate and then I've sprinkled gold sprinkles on it, which I think, this is what I'm talking about where I say I have way too many sprinkles. I might have gotten rid of my gold. No. See, I told you. I have too many sprinkles. I have these gold sprinkles that are hanging out with me. So I think these are kind of festive. But again, you can use anything that you've got on hand. If you don't have any of these things, like don't feel like you have to do them. They're perfectly delicious, just gingerbread. And that's actually very holiday already, just gingerbread. But if you wanted to go like a little bit more, you know, decorative about it, if you've got the time, if you want to do like stuff with your kids, if they want to help out, or if you just feel like, oh, I'm going to give them as gifts and I want them to look a little bit, you know, fancier. I'm trying to not use the word extra because Mary also gives me a hard time for extra.
Well, so my niece just asked, can you add marshmallow fluff on top? Do you think that would taste
marshmallow fluff might be interesting. You know what I would do? Okay, this is going to be very controversial. I can feel it. You can do 2 cookies and put the marshmallow fluff in between and then make them like sandwich cookies. But I would maybe make them a little bit smaller. Like make the cookie size. So we were using the 2 tablespoon scoop. I would use maybe like a 1 tablespoon and make them a little bit smaller, and then you can do that and put the marshmallow fluff on top.
That sounds good.
Yeah, because I think the marshmallow fluff on top, the spreadable consistency maybe won't be, because what happens with the chocolate is that it dries, right? So you can stack them and you can like, you know, put them in the cookie jar with like marshmallow fluff, or if like I was even about to say like Nutella or something like that. If you put any of those spreads on top, it's going to stay sticky. So you're not going to be able to like stack them, put them down. But if you're putting them on a plate and that's, you know, just on a plate, then feel free. If you're going to eat them right away, especially. Yeah. Delicious marshmallow.
Well, the test run did not last longer than 2 days in my house. So.
I was just thinking about marshmallow. Actually, it's so great that that your niece brought that up because I was thinking about, there was this great recipe that I just saw in Bon Appetit magazine where it's like a chocolate peanut butter pretzel cookie, and they put marshmallow in the middle. They take like a marshmallow while it's hot and they sandwich it between 2 of those cookies, and then they let it cool down, and it's like, so you just have this marshmallow between the 2 cookies, which,
so it's like a chocolate peanut butter s'more.
Yes, exactly. With like a little bit of pretzel. So yeah, you definitely can do any of those things. And like I said, though, you don't have to do any of that. You could just eat them as you can. But if you have extra time, or you need to get rid of things like I do all the time, like I said, I have a lot of sprinkles living in my house for obvious reasons. I bake a little bit too much, but
I think it's perfect. I think it's
if you have any of those things laying around, and like let's say like you're doing like a cookie exchange, or you're doing like, you know, cookie gifts or whatever, and you just want to bring them up a notch, then I would recommend any of those decorations. And if you don't have good chocolate at home, they do sell melting chocolate wafers in your regular grocery store, or even like a Target or a Walmart. You can buy the Ghirardelli makes really great ones, or you can buy, if you can find them in, like, I know they sell them at Michael's, they have those Wilton colored ones, and you can do different colors. Like you can do red and you can do green, and you know, the things that you use for cake pops, for anybody out there that makes cake pops, those are the same melting chocolates that people use. So the sky is the limit, guys, on decorations if you want to. And then if you don't want to decorate it, and let's say, so I used all my cookie dough because I only made half. Shifali, you probably have a little bit more left that you can go ahead and mold out.
Some left.
Yeah, so she's got more that she can mold out. Did we put on a timer?
I did.
You did?
I did. It's 9 seconds. It's almost over.
Okay, good. Because I was like, you know, I've been jabbering away and I don't remember. Because I have the old school timer.
If your oven's at 350, you might need to longer.
If it was at 350, I would need it longer, so it'd be okay if I didn't turn on my timer. But it's at 375. Thank you, Shifali, for reminding me. 375. And I don't have a normal timer, and I usually get a manual timer because I am notorious for forgetting to do timers. And my friend Catherine gave me a great, and I don't know how to put it right now, actually. Gave me a great manual timer when I first moved to New York that I've been using. So I'm going to take a look. Oh, those look great. All right, let me look.
I did it!
I really wish you could smell these cookies.
I know, this is the best part.
Oh my god, they smell so good. All right. These would be JulieAnn's, and you could tell already.
Oh, look at it. I love the sparkle on it.
Yeah, I think they're actually good. So, like I said, because they're brown, you might not necessarily. I like doing the touching method. If they are a little bit, they should push back just a little bit, and then they're dry in the middle. They're dry and they push back. They're pretty much good to go. And you can see too, the edges are a little bit browner. I know it's hard to see because they're already brown, but they're a little bit browner on the edges that you can see there. And so these should be good to go. And then if they're not super, super hot, I do like lifting just a little and looking underneath. Yeah, and seeing the underneath. And they shouldn't be really dark underneath. They should be pretty okay. I'm not going to be able to lift that, I don't think, for the camera to see because it's too hot, but whoop, maybe. Should look about like that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm very glad that Shifali recommended to press them down because I like my cookies a little bit flat. I don't like them too puffy. But here we go. We didn't even have to. What's great about this gingerbread cookie recipe versus some of the ones that you see is that this particular one didn't have to be refrigerated. A lot of the doughs that you see in recipes online or in books require refrigeration, which again, you can totally do. But in this case, because we want them right away, didn't have to wait. We do have to wait for them to cool down. Well, if you're the type of person that doesn't want it to completely crumble in your mouth when you bite into it. If you like warm cookies, which, you know, sometimes like warm cookies are delicious. But this is going to be great with like some hot chocolate or some eggnog, or I don't know what other holiday drinks you can have with this. Hot apple cider.
It's really good with tea too.
Tea, there we go, glass of milk. So, Shifali, we made these cookies in like 40-ish minutes.
I know, it's amazing.
This is great. And I really do wish that we did have smell vision because I'm smelling this right now and they smell very, very good. Like I want to inhale it. I'm like this.
I broke it apart so that people could see like that it's cakey inside.
Yay! So what I would do is normally I would leave my cookies on the cookie sheet, let them cool down on the cookie sheet. And then once they're cool enough to move and they're not so floppy, when I say floppy, like, you know, they're kind of like bendy, they're about to break, you can take these and move them over onto a cooling rack if you've got them. And if you don't worry about it. Just let them cool completely until they're cold onto this sheet. So there you go. Did Mary say booze?
Yeah, she said they go well with booze.
I mean, fair, Mary. A nice bourbon drink? Ooh. Mary, if you've got Rex. Some bourbon drinks. So
yeah, maybe Mary should like comment some like drinks that go well with it.
I know, Mary, if you've got Rex for like some drinks. So Shifali, thank you so much for baking with me and listening to me jabber on. And
so much fun. And you pushed me outside my comfort zone for sure.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I'm glad that your sons are now going to be able to eat the cookies that you made. Now they're done, they'll stop playing their video games and they will come and eat your cookies.
Yeah, they smell it. They're actually hanging out over there. They're like standing there hiding because they don't want to be on, but they want the cookies.
Well, because they can smell them. Because like I said, if you could smell them right now, guys, they smell delicious. Just they smell delicious. I'm not tooting our own horn here. Like they actually smell really good. I'm actually really excited. So here we are. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mary, for being our science expert and giving us some notations when Shifali was just like, when JulieAnn was like, you can just do this, haha, and like thinking that she'd get away with whatever she was saying. So thank you for fact checking me as always. Shifali, thank you so much for spending your Saturday with me.
Oh, thanks. It was so much fun.
I know, and it was so nice to see your face. I was just saying how, like, you know, it's been such a long time since you know we saw each other. And I mentioned before we all started, you were the reason why I got involved in the radio station and why I met all these amazing people, including Alicia from last week. So, so that is Shifali, and we have made cookies. And everybody, if we don't speak sooner, have a very, very happy holiday.
Yes.
Bake cookies. If you bake them, tag Shifali, tag I'll tag Mary. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. And just show us the cookies that you went ahead and you made today, later.
And especially like went all out with decorating and the chocolate.
Oh yeah, and especially guys, if you went out on decorating and you actually decorated these cookies, I would love to see it too. That'd be fantastic. And just let us know how it went and if you enjoyed them or not. And aside from that, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your holidays. And we will see you again. And we'll
bye guys.
All right, bye. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you all.